My personal experience and interest in feminism is probably rooted in its absence. I think for me it is definitely an ongoing project to recognize and untangle internalized misogyny, and I was very much brought up in a context where men and women, boys and girls were not on equal footing, and that was a dynamic, like many of us, that felt palpable and unjust. And I think from there, experiencing as a girl that inequity also grew in me a very vested interest to explore and contribute to the dismantling of other inequities. I was just thinking this morning, I grew up going to a lot of rock shows in like garages or, ugly warehouses. And a girl who I grew up with had this slogan that girls with guitars don't make rock stars, which is something that I totally forgotten. But as I've been playing a lot of music while here, that phrase keeps coming back to me, as I'm strumming my guitar. Not necessarily a rock star, but that a girl in my community was propagating that message herself, and just all the different ways growing up that you don't even question it, that it seems cool to have a phrase like that, girls with guitars don't make rock stars, and to be a girl going to rock shows. So I think for me, that dissonance of my own moral compass with just blatant inequities around me led me to look at questions of misogyny in my community, but also in myself. I worked for a long time in an environment that was very patriarchal, and probably the first half dozen times that I encountered blatant dismissiveness towards women colleagues who were busting their asses. Are we allowed to swear in this? Who were doing really tough work. I didn't know how to respond, but I felt it. And I think oftentimes as women, when we encounter systemic expressions of misogyny or personalized instances of sexism, we think that it's us. And it's like we were all there when the radiation came down. We're all swimming in patriarchy, white supremacy, systemic oppression. But I learned how to write in a space that was very focused on men telling me what the right way what craft was, or what linear narrative needed to look like, or non-linear narrative not being appropriate. And it took me a number of years as a writer, I think, to undo some of those messages and to really listen to myself. It's hard for me to think about being a female writer and very, very important influences on that practice and that identity, and not think of A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. For me, I have goosebumps right now. I didn't read that book in a literature class. I read it in a gender studies class with an amazing instructor, Gail Solomon. But it shocks me that course isn't taught in literature. It's very much about how women's access to space, privacy, time, solitude, peace limit her ability to make work. That book for me was fundamental. I was probably 19 or 20 when I read it, but it's really shaped my thinking to really practical ways as well. When I was working full-time in Seattle, I would sublet a therapist's office on Saturday and Sunday. It wasn't super expensive, but it felt like a big decision. It was an economic decision, but it was also a decision that came directly from reading Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, because I understood and craved the importance and the power of having a space dedicated to my creative practice, because there was nothing in the world around me, in my professional life or in my personal life, that was telling me go find your space.